Welcome to my lecture. This is a continuation lecture from my previous lecture where we discussed about the 10 principles of economics, which are actually very important to understand economic outcomes. So we could finish 5 principles and I explained with the various examples and also how they are related for the public policy frame. Further to continue, we'll move to principle 6, which is a market. As I discussed in my previous lecture, that market is very important place where buyers and sellers assemble, and then price is set and also optimum level of quantity is set. So here, for example, if we consider public policy as a commodity, then price for public policy, and then also the quantity, like at what level the resources can be optimized efficiently, that can actually take place in the market in a sense, in the society or in the economy. If it is social policy, then society. If it is related to economic policy, then it will be decided at the in the economy at large. So in short, market where all the economic activities are taken place. So the question that we raised at the beginning while explaining economics of public policy, where we tried to explain like why we think that economics is important, what to produce, why to produce, for whom to produce, how much to produce. So this is very important before discussing, because market decides all this. In the market where buyers and sellers, buyers here are say consumers, and sellers are the producers, who will decide based on the demand how much products or goods and services to be produced, and price will be determined there. So if I quote Adam Smith, that all of us we know, on the invisible hand concept, where it is mentioned that prices are determined by decentralized decision rather than central planning. So whether how much quantity of particular commodity or the policy, it is actually determined by the by the people, and also in the market through the demand. It is not like it is set by the central planning, and therefore the market is very important. So one can take the example of coffee. If there is a demand for coffee, then of course price for the coffee goes up, and then if price goes up, it is an encouragement for the producers to produce more, because value on the coffee will be increasing in the market. So this is just to precisely tell you like how market plays. So I'll just here I'll take just a small example to make little these things clear. So here on the horizontal axis, if I measure like quantity for x, x could be anything, like say x also could be any policy. And here on the vertical axis, we are measuring price of x, like x is a commodity. It could be commodity, or it could be goods or services, or it could be a policy also, like here. So as we know, the demand function for x is a downward sloping. And why is it that we will not explain much, because you are expected to study principles of economics in details, and also you are expected to study microeconomics, like introduction to microeconomics. This will clarify why it is demand function is downward sloping, and why supply function for that particular commodity like x is upward sloping. So if it is x, like supply curve, and here demand curve for the x, so here it is intersecting to each other, like at point here, and then we can refer as point E, and E is our equilibrium. And here the price where demand and supply of that commodity like X is getting optimized. So here say Px star is the optimized level of price of that commodity, and then here Qx uh, star is the optimum level of quantity at a given resources can be produced in the market, and it will be decided by the buyer and seller in a place which is called market. So here OPX star is the price which will be set, and OQX star is the optimum level of quantity that market decide, and this are actually depending on how we behave as a consumer to demand for certain goods, and also based on our demand and also other factors, supplier also will decide, like producer also will decide how much to be supplied at that particular price. So now moving to principle 7, where government comes, and role of government, as I already explained, is important, and always it is expected that it will have the positive impact on the total outcome, like overall nation's outcome. So here one can say that due to externality market can fail and government can come and then here with the corrective measures, and then somehow market will again come back to the original point. So couple of examples like positive externality and also with the negative externality. Like negative, I mean, let's begin with the negative externality. Like if somebody smokes and if you as a student don't smoke, but then if your roommate in the hostel they smoke, then certainly you are getting affected, being a passive smoker in that particular room. So smoking will be used as a kind of negative externality for your health. And also one can also consider as like in the factory, if it is very close to the river, and then for positive production, if one factory or industry produce, but then as a residue, industrial residue, it is sent to the river, then the people who are living on the on river for their livelihood, they will be affected, because there will be negative impact on the blue economy and also on the fish, for instance. Then obviously fishers fishers community will be affected. So this is basically the again example of the negative, but then for the positive production. So and therefore how government can intervene? Government can come and introduce pollution tax on a factory to reduce environmental damage, and some corrective measures will be taken. If it is a case of hostel, then of course hostel guidelines will clearly state that smoking in the academic institutions or in the hostel it is prohibited, and if somebody violate that, then of course corrective measures will be taken. So those are the policy level discussions, right? So one, government can also come in, or any organizations also can take corrective measures and maintain the kind of control the externality. In case of positive externality, that I can also give one more example. Some positive externality also is there. One example, like if your neighbor is switching on the light at night at the gate, and then and that light, the power of the light is so much that you are actually you don't need to switch on your light at the gate in your house. So of course you are saving money. So here you're getting positive, I mean, this can be considered as a positive externality, and as outcome you are actually saving some money. So now next, where government actually requires to come here is like when market fails. So monopoly and monopsony, these are the two cases that one can actually take, and then monopolizing the market is prohibited, and therefore government has a different kind of policies to control. And monopsony, for instance, like say labor market is and then employer is the buyer, but then employer will set the price, and as a seller, um, like employees or the workers will not have any sort of say in that particular bargaining um, in the market. And here the market is labor market, and therefore government comes and then decides, like set the minimum wages, and minimum wages is a policy, as a policy document, and by the government will be implemented, of course. And in India, there are several minimum wages for that, for various sectors. So this is how, like, market power can be controlled by the government through various positive corrective measures. And this is where role of government comes, and it is discussed in the principle 7 of economics. Now next move to next principle, which principle 8, 9 and 10. If you recollect, I have said that this is for the overall, like not only individual behaviors, or not how individuals they interact with each other, or the way in which they interact. This principle 8, 9, 10, it talks about how these individuals actually contributes, and their interactions have the positive impact on the economy. So a country's standard of living depends on the ability to produce goods and services. It is given that productivity drives living standards. If higher productivity, then of course higher production, and then if higher production, higher output, and then return also will be high, and then that also reflects on the standard of livings. Um, Now sources of productivity could be many. The first, to begin with, human capital. Like human capital here is like investment on educations and health, and then that creates a productive workforce, and also overall nation's productivity. Physical capital, like investment on say irrigations, or setting up heavy industries, and so on and so forth. They're the physical capital. And then of course the technology, like say for example AI, or other technology, like computer. So these are that these are the factors which actually help to enhance the productivity and overall economic growth. And then also institute plays big role in the productivity discussions. So now policy angle in this particular, if I want to link to the public policy. So long term growth depend on education, infrastructure, innovation, and governance quality. So now when we say that there is a trade-off, uh, and then if there is a resources limited, and government has to choose which one to focus more, whether to invest more on social infrastructure, or to invest more on the physical infrastructure. So social infrastructure here, what we mean is like investment on the education and health, and investment on the physical infrastructure is basically on the road and highways and others. So when we say that there is a trade-off within the within the limited resources, so if government decides to invest more on education, invest on educations, or more of the GDP share of the GDP should be more invested on health. And that was the debate during COVID-19, that we need to spend more to build hospitals and public hospitals, so that during the crisis, and that can be tackled. Same goes with the education, but then one really needs to understand that outcome from the education and investment from on the health, outcome is the long term. It's like immediate outcome will not be visible. and therefore from the policy this is very important, like where to invest, and for whom to invest and why to invest. If for the long term growth, then definitely investing on the human capital will be much more important as compared to the immediate physical infrastructure. Now just an example, like always Kerala is a central point on the discussion when education comes, and then Kerala's high literacy and skilled labor drive higher income levels compared to other states where education level is lower, for instance say Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh and other states. So here in principle 8 what I mean is, like when we talk about the productivity, we are talking about the overall productions, and there when we bring the people there, because in public policy the term public itself is clear, like policy for the public is made by the public for the public, and therefore this is kind of people at the center at the discussions. And there when we think about the long term growth and overall populations and peoples and their standard of livings will be one of the most important issues that one really needs to think about it, and their investment on human capitals plays very important role as and besides the other physical infrastructures. So now moving to principle 9, here also again the role of the government comes in terms of prices, controlling the prices. So principle 9 in ManQ, it says that prices rise when the government prints too much money. So let us explain and see how what it means and how we can actually explain. So money is a connotation. Those who are students of economics, like we say that money is round because it has positive kind of impact, or during medium of exchange it rolls, and then money is flat, like if you store, it has the store value. So when you put money and then it has the value, store value. So now when we are talking about the price, so one of the concerns that always comes both for the fiscal policy and the monetary policy in the public policy discourse is the inflation, how to tackle inflation. So it's basically, inflation is a situation where the general level of price of the commodities in the economy increases. So of course that is one of the concerns, like one of the major concerns in the macroeconomics. We'll discuss that little more in details in our in swing lectures. So in economics we discuss about different terms like short run and long run mainly. So in short run, excess money, like if money supply increases, so that means excess supply of money, then value of money falls, and then value of goods and services also increases. So if you have more money, then there is a demand for the goods and services, and then value for the goods and services increases because excess money supply, and like people have the money, and then the overall value of the money falls, and then that leads to inflationary situation in the economy. So now in the long run, inflation is almost always caused by the excessive growth in the quantity of the money. And example, like in India in late 2000s, high government spending and rising money supply contributed to India's high inflation. If you see that inflation was really high, and then it was actually from the government excessive government expenditure and also rise in the money supply. So when we think about that, there is a policy interventions, and there government comes to control the price. When we talk about policy, so here central bank or federal reserves, they play important role. Central bank like RBI in case of India maintain price stability through monetary policies. So and then again in the money market there is a again demand and supply, we will discuss in details. So demand for money and supply of money. So there this price can be controlled through two policies. Either you can control through fiscal policy or through monetary policy. How fiscal policy? Fiscal policy is basically, when we talk about fiscal policy, we'll discuss this in details when we talk about elements of macroeconomics in our third unit of the this course. There we'll discuss like what is aggregate demand, aggregate supply. So here AD, what I mean is like aggregate demand. So here aggregate demand is basically one can write as the equivalent to total output, which is basically summation of consumption, then investment, and then government expenditure. This is in case of the closed economy. So I'm not considering here export and import. So when fiscal policy is taken up by the government, and let's think about one type of fiscal policy, which is contractionary fiscal policy. And in this fiscal policy we also have expansionary fiscal policy, where government spends more and reduce the taxes. So we are taking the example of contractionary fiscal policy and its impact on the aggregate demand. So what does this contractionary fiscal policy means? Like reduce sort of government expenditures and also increase the taxes. So when this happens, like cutting the government expenditure and lower the aggregate demand and for goods and services, or other way that you increase the taxes and then reduce the disposable income, your actual income, and minus total tax. And then of course household will consume less and farms will invest less. So this is like kind of circular that we'll discuss. So if we like imagine this is like aggregate demand which is downward sloping, and on the vertical axis we are measuring aggregate price level, and here say aggregate output, and output is like say capital Y, which can also be referred as GDP. And here if I consider like say aggregate supply is fixed, and if it is aggregate supply, and you can see even in the overall economy there is a demand and supply, and then if aggregate demand curve shifts downward, and then here price level initially it was P1 and now it is moving down to P2. So obviously price level is decreasing from the, say initial point A to B, now point B. So if through fiscal policy government intervenes by reducing the government expenditure or increasing the taxes, then overall price level will be reduced, and this fall in price will be getting impacted on the inflation, and inflation also, rate of inflation will also be less. So there is a direct relationship between price level, changes in the price level, and then changes in the inflation. So now coming to monetary policy, here Reserve Bank of India again is a central bank for India, and taking the monetary policy or policy measures through monetary policy is like very faster. So either government can decide, can inject more money, I mean if it is expansionary monetary policy, or inject less money if it is reductionary monetary policy. So that is through money supply, where central bank has a direct control. But then between monetary and fiscal policy, I think it is very clear that fiscal policy is little robust, and then it takes time to respond because it is not the direct, it is through aggregate demand and also through overall the consumption and investment and government expenditures. So now principle 10, it talks about society faces a short run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. So what is inflation and what is unemployment, we'll discuss at length in our different lecture. But inflation is the changes in the price. So in short run, policymakers can reduce unemployment by increasing demand. So either by spending more through fiscal policy or through monetary policy by printing more money. It's like injecting more money in the economy. So and then there is a kind of trade-off relationship between two broad macroeconomic indicators. One is rate of inflation, the other one is rate of unemployment. So short run Phillips curve, those who are students from economics, you will know that there is an inverse relationship between rate of inflation. If rate of inflation decreases, then rate of unemployment increases. So this is the short run this thing. Just to give you the graphical visualization, like this is Phillips curve, short run Phillips curve. We can also write short run Phillips curve, and here say if it is inflation, rate of inflation, and here unemployment rate, and then you can see the inverse relationship, like if inflation rate decreases from pi dot 1 to pi dot 2, then obviously unemployment also will, if reduce, then unemployment rate will increase. So in long run it doesn't happen, and that is a discussion, like natural rate of unemployment, it gets fixed at the natural rate of unemployment, and then inflation increases, but then it doesn't have any sort of relation with the unemployment or the output, and that is fixed at one point. So therefore long run Phillips curve is vertically straight line. Like supply shocks can be taken as an example, like from 1970s, from the oil crisis, and then also people's expectations, like you are expecting to save more for future for the higher return, but it may not work that way. So these expectations also plays important role in the short run and long run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. So now moving to the economics, like when we discuss about 10 principles, so these principles can be applied and can be understood from both from individuals decision making processes, or from the macro national level, national level or macro outcome also. So there are the two branches, as you all of you are aware, within economics. One is micro, and this is a branch of economics that examines the functioning of individual industries, individual behaviors in decision making process, and that could be farms or households. So households and farms, they are the first basic units in the economy, where factors of production and factors of payments in return that are exchanged. We'll discuss when we discuss about the market much more in detailed manner. In macroeconomics, in this division of macroeconomics is basically the branch that deals about overall economic behavior of the nation or at the aggregate level, like here income, employment, output, and others, like say price level. So these are at the national level. So these are the indicators we'll discuss when we discuss within macroeconomic indicator. So now just to summarize all 10 principles of economics. So these 10 principles of economics can be understood from two branches, like in economics. One is microeconomics, the other one is macroeconomics. So microeconomics by definition those who are student of economics, you know that we deal with the behavior of the individuals, and these individuals could be firms and households, and then individuals and firms. These are the two basic branches or economic units where factors of production and factors of payments are exchanged, and these are the behavior that we will discuss much more in details in my lecture, where we'll be talking about the market. And then macroeconomics, it is a branch of economics where we examine the economic behavior of the nation as a whole or aggregates, and here indicators could be income, employment, output, and say price level, because inflation is also one of the major macro indicators, and that is a policy discussions on the national level. So here I'll stop this lecture, and I'll also recommend ManQ for this 2 lectures where I have discussed 10 principles of economics for you to study. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in my next lecture.